Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Gorby, and I'm going to be reading chapter 26, Mummy, in the 14th Goldfish. The house is toasty and warm when I go into the kitchen to make breakfast. My grandfather is already sitting there dressed. My mother stomps in. Who turned up the furnace? Not me, I say. My grandfather gives her a cool look. I did. Why, she asks. Because it's like an ice bucket in this place, he says. You could preserve dead bodies in here. Well, we're trying to save money, she says. He digs into his pocket and pulls out a $20 bill. Here, he says, turn up the heat. My mother and Ben are going to see a play a friend of hers is putting on. As they're walking out the front door, my grandfather trails after them. What time will you have her home? He asks Ben. Excuse me, my mother says sarcastically. I think I'm a little old for a curfew. Well, I'm the babysitter, my grandfather says. And don't you think I have a right to know what time you'll be home? I'll have her home by midnight, Ben promises. I pop popcorn and try to get my grandfather to watch a monster movie marathon with me. They're showing a bunch of black and white classics. Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Mummy, Dracula. But he tells me he's too busy. I need to work on my T. Malvinus paper. I have to submit it for the peer review, he says. I'm still watching at midnight when my grandfather walks into the den looking angry. Your mother is late, he says. 10 minutes later, Ben's car pulls into the driveway and my grandfather races out the front door. I follow him. He goes right up to Ben's car and bangs on his window. Ben rolls it down and looks at my grandfather in confusion. You're 10 minutes late, my grandfather tells him. There was an accident, Ben apologizes. Well, then you should have given yourself more time. His voice sounds like a 13-year-old's voice, but he has the authority of an adult. After Ben drives away, we go inside, and my grandfather and my mother have it out. Were you kissing in the driveway? You know the whole neighborhood can see you. My mother just throws her arms up in the air. So what, she says. Well, what kind of example are you setting for your daughter? My mom loses it. Excuse me, but am I living in the 1950s? Besides, you're out of line telling me what to do. I am your father. Well, you may be my father, but I am the grown-up around here, and you don't tell me what to do. I'm the grown-up, he shouts back at her. Have you taken a look at yourself in the mirror lately, she yells at him, because you are not a grown-up. You're a teenager. He glares at her and then walks out of the room. We hear the bathroom door slam shut dramatically. She turns to me. See? She says, teenager. There's a traveling Egyptian exhibition at the De Young Museum in San Francisco, and Raj invites me to go see it with him. My parents love art, and I've practically grown up at the De Young. I know where all the bathrooms are. My father likes to joke and say I was potty trained next to Renaissance masters. My mother needs to borrow some props from the theater in the city, so she offers to drive us in. I invite my grandfather to come. I don't have time to play, he tells me, and his fingers are flying across the keyboard of his laptop. I'm working on my patent application. As we drive through Golden Gate Park, I notice another building, one that I must have passed millions of times, but I've really never paid much attention to it. The California Academy of Sciences. I suddenly want to know where all the bathrooms are in it, too. There's a huge line when we get to the De Young. I had no idea mummies were so popular. Raj fits right in with the San Francisco crowd, and nobody looks at him twice. We wind our way through the exhibition. In one room, they've recreated the inside of a tomb. The sarcophagus is surrounded by a dead man's belongings, his furniture, food, and a pair of leather slippers. It's like his life has been frozen in time. And then I can't help but think about my grandfather's apartment. We finally made our way to the mummy. That was the highlight of the exhibition. It's behind glass, and it's nothing like I imagined. The body is small, maybe my size, and skinny. The bandages aren't white like in the movies. Instead, they're dark brownish black, and they look like they've been melted onto the body. There's a hole where the nose should be, and the skin looks hard like suede. But it's the hair that's the most disturbing. There's a long tuft of brown hair curling on the back of the mummy's head. I almost wish I hadn't seen it. It makes the mummy seem too real. I don't remember my grandfather's funeral, my grandmother's funeral, but I know she was cremated and her ashes were scattered in San Francisco Bay. There's something I always liked about that. Whenever I look at the bay, I think that I can hear her in the rolling waters and the shouting seagulls. Why do they do all of this? I asked Raj. Why not just bury the body or cremate it? Because they wanted to live forever. He squints a half smile at me. They thought their spirit would come back in the body if it was preserved. You know, kind of like what Melvin's doing. Melvin's not dead, I say. True, but he's sort of preserving himself, he says, just like a mummy. I stare at the tuft of hair. Hey, come on, Raj says with a smile. Let's hit the next room. They've got a mummified cat. Chapter 27. After. On the bus ride home from school, my grandfather holds up his science textbook. He must be running low on laundry because he's wearing a cast shirt of my mother's production of hair. It's tie-dyed, and I think it's Star Lily. T. Malvinus will have its own chapter in here someday, he growls. Hey, I say with a forced smile. He starts paging through the sections. Where would it make the most sense for them to put it? When we get home, my grandfather heads to the kitchen for a snack, but I'm not hungry. My stomach feels a little weird. So I go into my bedroom and lay down. I can't stop thinking about mummies. It's so creepy. The dead waiting to come back to life. Maybe there's another reason there are monsters in horror movies. I look around my room with new eyes and see what I observe makes me question everything. The handprints on the wall. As people grow older, will hands get smaller instead of bigger because of T. Malvinus? The pink bow on my dresser from the birthday present Raj gave me. Will people have fewer candles on their cakes every year because they're getting younger? I feel like Galileo, my vision of the universe suddenly upended. Before I know it, I find myself sitting at the computer looking at the atomic bomb and Oppenheimer. All at once, I need to know what about the after. What happened after the bombs were dropped on Japan? Images flash across the screen. Crushed bombings, smoke, crying children. The article says that no one knew for sure how many people died in the bombings. One estimate puts the final death toll at 185,000. I'm good at math. I try to make the number something that I can actually understand. There are 900 kids at our middle school, so that would be 200 middle schools worth of dead kids. Of kids like Raj, of Momo, and Brianna. And that's not even counting everyone else. Like the school secretary, the janitor, and all the teachers. Mr. Ham with his funny ties. My head spins. What if it's happening again? Like Mr. Ham says, the genie is out of the bottle. Oppenheimer's words ring in my ears like 1,000 bombs going off at once. We knew the world would never be the same. My grandfather's at the kitchen counter with his laptop eating a burrito and drinking tea. The words bubble up out of me. What will they write? I ask him. About what, he says. About us in the textbooks. What will they write? He stares at me. I mean, will they say that Melvin Sergarsky and Allie Cruz changed the world, or that we ruined it? Ruined? We're saving people from old age, just like polio. But old age isn't the same as polio, Grandpa, I say. He shakes his head. What has gotten into you? This is science. This is how discovery works. I believe in science, but what if it isn't a good idea? What if we're not Salk? What if we're Oppenheimer? What if T. Malvinus is like the bomb? Oh, nonsense, he says, and he turns back to the computer, dismissing me. Brianna thinks you're cute, I blurt out. He turns to me with a perplexed look. Look, who's Brianna? My friend. Ex-friend. I don't even know who she is anymore, but it doesn't matter. She wants to date you. I'm a widower. I have no interest in dating. He doesn't get it. He's like Marie Curie with radiation. He doesn't see what's going on. He doesn't see that it's going to poison everything. You're like a mummy, coming back to life. You're not making any sense at all, he says to me, like he's talking to a toddler who's having a tantrum. I stare at his tie-dyed shirt, and I suddenly understand what Star Lily was trying to teach us with the goldfish. Endings are sad, like Goldfish, dying in grandmother's slippers, and Brianna and me. But beginnings are exciting, like discovering something I might be good at and making new friends. Raj. It's a cycle of life, I say, remembering Star Lily's words. Something needs to move forward, not backward. Who wants to move forward? Not me. My mind is racing now, and I think of things not for moving forward, like my mom. She's scared of making a mistake again, even though anyone can see that Ben is the perfect missing piece for her puzzle. What about the whole law of motion thing? You're supposed to keep moving or you get stuck, like Mom with Ben. She can do better than him, my grandfather says, ignoring what I'm trying to say. What if we've gone too far? What if we ruin the whole world? So dramatic, he observes, just like your mother. What about the trash cans, I ask. I put them out tonight, he says. How are they going to work? With all the old people and we're young again, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to decide where to put out the trash cans and to turn up the heat? Who's going to be the grown-ups? He looks momentarily off balance, as if he hasn't considered this. Then his expression hardens. You don't understand. You haven't had to live through this, he says. The words tumble from my mouth before I can stop them. But I want to. I look at him imploringly. Is growing up, growing old, is life, is it all so terrible? His eyes go still and he looks at me, like he's seeing me for the first time. I take a deep breath, remembering the feeling of dancing on the floor, the music pounding through me, and the possibility of something. I don't know what. So close that I want to feel it again. Because I want to try, she whispers. I'm only 12. The garage door rumbles open and my mother walks into the kitchen carrying bags of takeout. I picked up Chinese, she says with a smile. And yes, Dad, I got you mugu gai pan and extra soy sauce. He stares at the bag and then at me. I'm not hungry, he says, and walks out. My mom turns to me. Guess there's a first time for everything.